Hey, what's up? It's Jerad with Ditch Auto, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do some editing in Lightroom and Photoshop. We're going to remove some objects from a photo and Photoshop something back into the photo that was covered up by one of those objects. So it's going to be a pretty intricate video, so I'm excited to jump right in. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to try and Photoshop some stuff out of an image here that is going to require borrowing things from another image. Now, I have this image of my son. He was doing a fun run kind of thing, and he was going over this wall. And, you know, there's this helper guy over here who was there to help him down the wall should he need help. And there's kids that were smaller than my son that were definitely needing help. But he's blocking the logo that was painted on the wall, and he's out of focus. It kind of makes the photo have some distractions in it. And then there's this kid over here on this side waiting for his turn. All you see is his arm. So we want to Photoshop that out as well. So there's going to be a few things that are easy to Photoshop, but there's going to be something that's a little bit more challenging to Photoshop. So thankfully I have this other image here of my son getting ready to lower himself down the wall where we have the full exposed logo that I could borrow from. And then of course Photoshopping this arm and the kid here, that's not going to be hard at all. So let's go ahead and start with the easy part. Just like always, you know, we have our background when we bring our image in, but I always hit Command or Control J to make a copy of that layer because I like to edit on an additional layer in case I need to do any sort of blending or I want to look at kind of the before and after of what I'm working on. So let's go and zoom in quite a bit. I'm holding down the space bar and the control, or if you're on a Mac, it would be the command key, and we can get in nice and close on what we want to Photoshop out here. So there are a couple of different tools that we can use. You're looking at the background here. The background is pretty bright, and there isn't a lot of stuff going on that would be noticeable if it started to repeat. So I could just simply use the clone stamp tool in this situation. When you're dealing with stuff like maybe Photoshopping on this wall and you have these knots and these patterns that would be very obvious if you repeated them in an unnatural way, then you might want to look at, you know, using a different tool. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key to sample a spot on the background, and then I'm going to come through and just paint over the kid here a little bit, get rid of his arm. We'll just go ahead and Photoshop away that arm. Can't see the kid anyways, so we're not doing any harm. We're just making it as if he was never there in the first place. So you can see here we have kind of a hard edge that we're gonna have to Photoshop up against, and if I have this brush and I start Photoshopping really close, the brush is gonna start to blend over into it because I have a soft brush. So I'm gonna wanna increase the hardness of my brush, probably up to pretty close to 100% as I get close to an edge here. And then that's not going to blend. You can see now what the brush preview looks like. It's a much harder edge. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll sample over here using the Alt key or Option key on a Mac. We'll click really close, and then since this is a straight edge, I'm just gonna go down here, hold down my Shift key, click again, and we'll just clean up. You can see here I'm kind of with this hard brush, it becomes a little more apparent that I've been Photoshopping, so we're gonna come back and clean that up. We will make our brush smaller by using the left bracket key. We're gonna come in here nice and close and just Photoshop on this edge. And let's do sampling again. Hold the Shift key down, we Photoshop that off. And now I can actually bring back a little bit of that hardness. We'll just go down to 0% on the hardness and we'll Photoshop out the rest of this. I'm gonna increase my brush size just a little bit more, and I can come through and clean this up. So you want the softness of the brush when you're using the clone stamp tool away from hard edges because it does some blending, and that's kind of nice. You can see, it might be hard for you to see in the video, but you can see I got rid of kind of that hardness that was just, you know, it just wasn't very nice to have out there in the background. And then of course, as we're close to the edge of the wall here, we want that hard edge. You can see here that I could probably get a little bit closer So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll make the brush hard again. And I'm gonna go with a smaller brush size. We'll sample, click nice and close, and then come down here, hold the shift key, and there we go. We pretty much got rid of that. There's no instance of that, distraction there anymore. We can't even see. And now I'm gonna go up and just clean up my line that was made by using a harsh brush. Just make sure you clean up any evidence that you were there. And now if we zoom back out to our image and then do a before and after, you can see no more kid in his arm there. Pretty nice. Looks like there was no distraction there ever to begin with. So now with this image, I'm gonna need to borrow something from this image. So I'm gonna grab the lasso tool, and we're just going to, I'm gonna need to get a pretty good piece of the board here because the seam goes right down the middle, and this kid here, he's covering up the entire seam. And this isn't gonna be perfect because I did move a little bit in this, so we're gonna have to do some maneuvers here just to to try and change this a little bit. So click and drag, and I'm gonna go ahead and just draw a big box around all of this like so, and let off. And now I've got a selection. I'm gonna hit Command C or Control C to select that, and we're gonna paste it into this image. Hit the V key to get your pointer back, and I'm just gonna try and put this into place here and see how close I can get this, without having to do too much crazy work. So you can see it's not too bad. I mean, there's some, I'm gonna have to Photoshop a little bit here, kind of get rid of his hair kind of sticking through. I'm just nudging it over using the arrow key. I'm gonna line up the original seam here and just go up as far as I can before reaching the top. And that's probably about as far as I can get. All right, so as you can see, it's gonna require very little Photoshopping. Really, I'm just gonna need to blend the boards together around where I Photoshopped in this piece. So in order to do that, select that layer that we just created by pasting in this piece of the other image, and then click on the mask tool down here that looks like a little laundry dryer. Click on that, it creates a mask. And now we're gonna use the brush tool. So the brush tool is super tiny right now. I'm gonna use the right bracket to make it a little bit bigger. And what we're basically doing here is we're going to blend between the two. Now, if I just paint with a hard edge brush, no blending is gonna happen. So make sure that your hardness is set all the way on 0, and then make sure you have a decent sized brush. Now, if you wanted to see the difference between the two, you can slide the opacity back and forth and kind of see where they start to blend. That might make it easier, depending on what you're trying to Photoshop, to even be able to tell where your original image begins and the new one ends. So I'm just going to just do a little bit. You can see barely just what's happening here as I blend this. There I blended in a little bit of that kid's head, so we need to make sure we don't have that happening. So I'm just blending, and because of this board, the board isn't the main focus here. My son climbing over the wall is, so nobody's even really going to be able to tell the difference here. I probably should rotate this logo just a little bit because I don't think the seam, I think I may have rotated the camera a little bit, and so there's a little bit of a difference, but I'm not really gonna mess with it too much. So the one thing that I do need to work on is this little spot here. So I need to work on Photoshopping this. There's some of the kid's hair kind of poking up towards the top there, and so I need to work on that spot. I probably could have done my selection a little bit better. You can see the main reason that I'm missing that spot is because I didn't get all of that selection. So sometimes you might want to go back through and get more of your selection or redo your selection. So I'm just going to paint over this. You can see I'm starting to get some of the top of that kid's head again. I may just have to go and grab that little chunk of the top of the board from the other image. So I'm gonna come back to my sample image and hit Command or Control D to remove that selection. I'm gonna grab that lasso tool again, and I'm even gonna go above the board here and get some of the background and hit Command C or Control C to copy. We'll come back over to our main image here and paste that in. And I'm gonna go ahead and drag this into place as best as possible, using the arrow keys to kind of nudge things around a little bit. I may need to rotate this a little bit because, as you can see, one side will line up here and the other side will not, and the background doesn't line up. You know, my camera was not on a tripod. I was not shooting, on a tripod. I was shooting handheld, and so, that's just what happens. So that's not going to be perfect, but I can drag this into place and just Photoshop some of this and not use all of it. All right, so that's relatively in place. Now I'm gonna do a mask on the thing just like I did for the last piece that we copied in. I'm going to paint away what is overlaying into the background here so we don't have any issues there. I'm going to paint away a little bit of what's coming over into the board. I'm going to be using very little of what we just copied over here. So I may need to either use a smaller brush or maybe increase the hardness just a little bit. And so we'll go ahead and come in here a little bit closer. It's like I'm doing woodwork. I'm just gonna sand away at the board a little bit. All right, so now let's look at the before and the after. You can see a little subtle difference here. I mean, there's a little shift in the wood, but one of the nice things about the wood is that the pattern does not make it completely obvious. So let's see at what we've got going on here. So one thing we've got that's happening, if you really want to get meticulous, is a little bit of an issue right here with the board. Sometimes when you copy things over, you're going to get some weird repeatable patterns, and that's just the top of his head and it just repeating too closely. So you can also hit the X key when you are painting, and you can see now I've just painted a little bit of that away. Because basically when you're using masks here, you're painting in either black and white to hide or reveal elements from that image. And so what I did was just switched from black to white to reveal a little bit more of that top layer. So now you can see that actually looks a lot better than it did. So if we go all the way back to the beginning, let's zoom out here. We've got our main image. We go ahead and Photoshop out the kid from the left. We go ahead and technically Photoshop out the helper guy, and then we clean up the top of the board. Very subtle cleanup right at the top to make the board look perfect. So now it's pretty good. I mean, really the only thing that's still distracting to me is this flagpole or this light post in the back. I'm not really gonna worry about that. That's, a pretty natural occurring thing here, and Photoshopping that out would just be a little bit overboard. But hey, Photoshop is here so you can go overboard. All right, well, I hope that was useful. I mean, sometimes you capture a photo and something is great about it, but something's also wrong with it. And if you think about that ahead of time and have the opportunity to get a kind of a clean shot that you could pull stuff from, then you can clean it up in post, and that's exactly what we just did. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel here on Ditch Auto to get notified when we create new videos and put them out there. Thanks so much.